we 2 weeks ago. So we started speaking about Pesach 2 weeks ago. Remember, I said it's like 3 weeks to Pesach, and that seemed like what? And now it's like less than a week to Pesach. What? But 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, we spoke about leaving Egypt in a general sense, in terms of each person figuring out what is the Egypt they would like to leave and getting out of it. I would like to report success. I am thanking God, I don't take credit. But when I prepared the class 2 weeks ago, Saturday night, I did select an Egypt to leave, and thank God I decided it, and it is done. And I'm really grateful, because it's very possible that if I wasn't giving a class about leaving Egypt, or if it wasn't the Pesach air, the atmosphere wasn't Pesach, I might still be like, battling, want to stop, whatever, it's not so good, whatever. But guess what? I left Egypt. I'm done. It's finished. Like, it's been 2 weeks, no issue. So I'm very grateful to God for that. Anyone would like to report any of their, it doesn't have to be as amazingly successful. Maybe I picked an easier thing. But anyone else that wants to report about that general first class, leaving Egypt, setting your goal, turning to God for help, keeping focus, remembering this is what you want to do. Absolute joy, absolute certainty, knowing God's walking with you and you are getting out of this Egypt, journaling, achieving the goal, taking on another one. Anyone besides myself would like to share on that?
So I have one, but I feel like I speak first every week. Anybody
So
else?
Let's have someone else. First of all, I spoke first.
Well, second.
Someone else would like to share what they did based on our leaving of Egypt several weeks ago class.
Yes,
all right,
I
Shira, I don't know. Maybe it was just me and you.
Okay, so last week, no babysitter, no cleaning help, whatever.
Right,
so
we discussed that last week, yes.
I'll do like 9 loads of laundry, no problem. I'm gonna handle this. Don't get stressed. It's all meant to be. I was great all day, like amazing. And of course, the Shemitah tested me towards the end of the day. So as I was like just about to sit down, my baby like tripped, fell in his mouth, which is already like, I'm not good with like blood and all that kind of stuff, like injuries, started bleeding. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, guys, off the couch right now. The baby just fell. And I'm like, oh my God, I totally just lost it. Okay, I had such a good day. He totally tested me, because like, that's like the perfect thing to get me going. Having like my baby get hurt and see blood, like together is not good for me. And then, but I really saw something crazy. I took a picture because I thought it was so beautiful. My daughter jumped up because she knows I'm not good with blood. And she took the baby from me, and the only blood that got on me was on my wrist, and it was in the shape of a heart. And I looked at it as like Hashem was saying, you worked really hard all day, you passed your test all day, I gave you this test, you didn't pass, but I'm still like here for you, I'm so proud of you. It was the weirdest thing. The only blood on me was like a little heart. I have a picture, it's so cool.
Wow.
That's my story.
Yes, your craft to your daughter.
Yeah, that was really nice for her. I was freaking out.
That's great. Imagine all those children and you're scared of blood. That's amazing to still be able to be scared of blood. But yeah, you know what? Sometimes, I mean, honestly, I said I picked a rather easy one. I mean, it was just something I was struggling with, but once I set my mind to it, it was done. I mean, hopefully, I hope I'm not creating any bad energy here. And some people picked much harder ones. But I love Shira's story. Why do I like Shira's story? She worked hard all day. She saw success all day. And God said, I'm pushing you further. And she failed. And then she still felt God was embracing her. God was saying, you know what? I so appreciate everything you did the whole day. That's not out the window. That all counts. That was all valued. And the next time you'll pass this one too. Maybe it won't look like this. Maybe look a little differently. But yes, it's deliberate design to turn your screws. And it's okay. Like if you lose it with your kids, you always have tomorrow. Again, you can't every day tell yourself you always have tomorrow. But if you do lose it with your kids, you do have tomorrow. So same thing with God. You just are going to stroll with that same Egypt the next day. And every day you're getting a bit more out. Anyone else have anything to say from that concept that we discussed, as I'm saying, 2 weeks ago? Okay, well, last week we took it deeper, because last week we said that the real Egypt we have to leave is the Egypt of ego. And we said that ego is like the roots of everything, almost. Definitely in terms of our own character flaws. So much is embedded in ego. And that's really the Passover saga. As we're refraining from the bread and the cake and the cookies and all that stuff that has risen, that's all symbolizing the rising ego. And when we go for that matzah, that flat, burnt, some people like it, some people don't. You're eating godly food. I will say honestly, for myself, the whole year I have this phobia of benching. Do not ask. I read Hebrew very quickly. Very quickly. I say mounds of Tehillim, of Psalms every day. And I rattle it off very quickly. But for some reason, it must be like ingrained in me from my childhood. I think of like benching after bread as like so long. So therefore, I really don't eat bread from Shabbos to Shabbos, besides Shabbos, Melov Malka, and then till the next Shabbos. But every day of Passover, including all the days of Chol Hamoed, I personally, and for me, it's work, I make a point to wash, to have matzah, which means to say the whole long, is not really so long, after blessing, the benching, because I know that it's so important to eat matzah. Eating matzah is literally eating faith. It's eating in a physical way. We're eating emunah. We're eating, we're digesting belief in God. We're told matzah is like godliness. And therefore, when you eat it, you can maybe have the sensitivity and the appetite, the appreciation, and maybe you don't appreciate it at all. But this is what's happening, especially the handmade round shmura matzah. Shmura means guarded, because this wheat was watched from the harvest. And there's such scrupulous care to make sure that it never possibly came in contact with any water. There's a story, just to understand this. This was in like, I can figure out the year probably, but I'm guesstimating, no, I'm just gonna say 1927, but I don't know if that was the right year. Might have been a little later than that. And this was in the height of the communist Soviet torture of any belief in God. Forget about Judaism, any belief in God throughout their entire USSR. And they also decided before Passover, hey, we want to have very good matzah with a very good rabbinical certification, because we want all the Jews to buy it, and we, the government, will make money because everything is government owned. Now, the breadbasket of Russia is the Ukraine. So they went to the chief rabbi of like this biggest city in Ukraine, who happened to be the Rebbe's father, Reb Levi Schneerson. And they said, okay, we're making matzah and we need your rabbinical certification because we want every Jew to buy it because we want to make a lot of money. And he said, no problem, but then it has to be according to my standards. They're like, what are you talking about your standards? This is USSR. Like, we don't believe in God. What are your standards? You want my certifications? Give me my standards with my mashgichim, with my rabbis. I'm going to appoint under you to watch everything. And if not, get another rabbi certification, not mine. And for some crazy reason, they agreed. And he appointed rabbis, like the real thing, all over, because this is handmade shmur matzah. To the degree that at one point his rabbis are very careful to realize that one of the trains carrying wheat went under a bridge and there was little drips of water from the bridge. They said that entire train, they couldn't use that flour. He was considered a rebel against the government for that. Unfortunately, he was arrested before Pesach. He never got to taste any of the matzahs. They were all sold throughout the entire Russia under his hechsher, under his supervision. And unfortunately, he never was able to leave his exile. He ultimately died in exile a number of years later. But to that degree, like this is shmur matzah. I don't care if the entire Soviet regime is pressuring me. If you want my certification, it's got to be my standards. So it's a tremendous thing to eat matzah. And when we're eating matzah, if you like it or not, you are eating belief in God. You are eating nullification to God. There is the custom of saving the most holy matzah is viewed as the matzah of the afikomen, the dessert. Saving a piece from that afikomen matzah to feed to a child, that a child's first food should be that most holy matzah. Their first food should be belief in God.
Mrs.
So
Turner, Ms. Turner, is it any matzah to eat over the whole Pesach or just during the Sidarim?
That gives you belief in God throughout the whole Pesach.
You can make like matzah pizza, matzah meal, all that stuff?
Any matzah gives you belief in God, but there's levels. So the most intense matzah that gives you belief in God is from the first Seder, and most intently from the afikomen of the first Seder. But especially, and then from the second Seder, and then from the afikomen of the second Seder, and then throughout the whole holiday. So yes, if you're gonna eat a matzah pizza, and that's you're gonna have matzah one day of all night, great, you're having matzah. If you have to wash on it, it's matzah, so it's matzah. Enjoy. So for the Seder, for people that are not careful to have handmade shmur matzah the entire Pesach, it's really good to do it for the Seder. And because we live in Chicago in 2021, you could go to Jewel and get it. Probably go to Mariano's in Hungarian also and get it. Like, it's that easy. I remember when I first moved to Chicago, some 30 years ago, like you ordered it from New York. There's no store in Chicago that had handmade round shmur matzah, but now it's a big deal. go to Kotel also, they probably have it, all over. So Baruch Hashem, in some ways things are flowing spiritually and physically, and just these things have become easier. In the past, they were a lot harder. It's actually very interesting because I give a class to women, most of whom, Jewish women that mostly are from Russia. I mean, they've been in America 20, 30 years, but they're all originally from Russia. And for many of them, their only Jewish memory and association was Matzah Pesach. They didn't know it was Pesach, but there was a time of year when they remembered sneaking and getting and hiding in their skirts and eating by their grandparents a piece of matzah, which feels such a beautiful thought. Like of all the things that the Jews clung to, that they knew nothing, they forgot everything, but they remembered Pesach, you have to eat matzah. And whatever risk they had to go through, and of course it was a risk in those days, they had matzah on Pesach. So what we understand, which of course they didn't, is that physically the bread and all 11 products, I mean, it could be vodka, it could be perfume, all 11 products that we keep away from is like physically keeping us away from ego. And as we eat that matzah, as we're eating, ingesting godliness, eating matzah is eating godliness, especially the matzah of the Seder, especially the afikomen of the Seder, especially the handmade round shmur matzah of the afikomen of the Seder. We're ingesting godliness. What?
What did you say is keeping us away from?
That we're physically not eating certain food products, anything that's chametz, it's leaven. And all of those food products have to do with ego. And we're instead eating matzah. And eating matzah is eating godliness, is eating belief in God, and is eating nullification. So the real exodus that we discussed last week is this idea of getting out of our ego. And we went through about half the steps last week, the bulk of the important steps. And we said to understand, the first step was understanding our ego, because we can have a lot of different behavioral manifestations. And we have to look at the roots and understand, like a lot of these things really are, ego in this form, ego in this form, ego in this form. So like we said, it could be anger, but it could also be impatience. It could be lots of different things that really, if you look at its roots, it's ego. But we said to really realize how horrible ego is, to really psych ourselves up against it. we said, don't focus on the surface issue, the anger, the jealousy, the intimidation, the manipulation, whatever the surface issue was. Focus on the ego. Because if anger is a manifestation of ego, there's no point in me trying to get rid of my anger. I have to get rid of my ego. And then automatically I'm gonna get rid of my anger. And if I focus on my anger, but I'm getting rid of my ego, I'm never gonna get rid of it because the roots of it are still there. We said, how do we get rid of it? By demanding nullification. And I said to pick one person who triggers you, just like she shared her story of how God triggered her. Baby, hurt, blood, he triggered her at the end of a long, exhausting day that she was being so perfect. He triggered her. So pick a trigger. Pick the person that's really difficult for you. And in your relationship with that person, consciously put aside your ego. We spoke about journaling to reflect and understand the process of what you're going through, which we said could also be journaling about other people and situations, not just her or him. And to really plan on buying this person a gift before Passover. This could be a physical gift or an emotional gift, or it could be lots of different things. It could be a gift, but a gift because you want to feel gratitude to this person, because this person is helping you free yourself of your ego. Okay, so that was as far as we got last week, which was through 5 of, I think, my 10 steps.
Mrs. Turner,
I did
have
it.
a question.
Who else? Yeah, someone has a question.
I have a question. If I have an allergy in the last couple of years to yeast and all 11 things, and I can't eat matzah, should I be making myself something different to symbolize a matzah?
Wait, your allergy is to yeast. There's no yeast in matzah.
Yes, but also to wheat. So I I make myself like things from spelt or almond flour,
matzah.
coconut flour.
There's spelt matzah.
Oh, really? I
Absolutely.
was not aware of that.
Absolutely. There's spelt matzah. You should,
But if I make me things at home, like spelt bread or things like that, should I refrain from making that during Passover? Because that's my normal bread?
For sure, absolutely. Because probably it's chametz, meaning the likelihood of it being really kosher for Passover spelt bread. Not any spelt bread recipes I know of. Like, it's probably gonna be chametz. But there is spelt matzah, and people that are very intolerant even of spelt, they probably just eat the matzah by the seder, and that's it. Because I know some people that they really get sick, but they force themselves by the seder, where it's a huge issue. Like we're saying, it's your belief in God for the year, it's your nullification to God for the year, it's this literal physical godliness. And then I'd say just for the rest of the week, eat potatoes, eat beets.
I can't eat potatoes. I'm also allergic to. That's my own.
Oh, okay. No potatoes and no beets. All right. Bananas, pineapples, oranges, macaroons, ladyfingers. I don't know. It's. There is nowadays, like, you could walk down the aisles of like Jewel. There's so much closer for past. I don't know if potato starch works for you either. There's
I can't do potatoes, and everything that doesn't have yeast or wheat has potato starch.
Potato starch, right? Exactly. You'll be like me. I eat very little on Pesach, and it's fine. But
I don't have a problem with it. I just wanted to know if, like, for the
symbolic do not make anything yourself. Thank you. That's an excellent question. Do not make anything yourself with spelt, because 99.99999% of the time it's going to be chametz. Like, it's just going to be impossible for you to make matzah, to make something that's truly leaven.
Right.
My children in Springfield, Illinois, they had like a model matzah bakery. It was very sweet. And they obviously, someone professional built it, and they show literally the process. And it's a very, very specific process to actually be able to produce something that's a quasi bread, what we call matzah, and that's kosher for Passover. So it's not something anyone could attempt, but there is, and I would encourage you to ask in whatever stores you shop, like, to call, not waste your time. Do you have spelt matzah?
I definitely will inquire. Thank you. I didn't know that.
Sure, they know.
Existed.
They definitely sell spelt matzah, and if you can't find it in any of there's so many stores in Chicago that stock matzah. If you can't find it, I would just go online on a Prime account, so for sure. 2 days. And just order it. They definitely have spelt matzah, I definitely know
thank
people
you.
that eat spelled matzah. Sure, sure. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, well, that was a really important question, and maybe it's beneficial for someone else. If someone really can't eat wheat, there are spelled matzahs. There are other grains also, but the most common one I know from people that don't eat wheat is usually spelt. But I do believe there are other grains as well, because some people can't have spelt either. So I want to proudly say, there goes my ego, that I took this very seriously. And as I was preparing the class, so I had the night before you, so it was last Saturday night, and I right away thought of someone that's definitely a trigger for me. And I really committed to really, really, really just be when acting with this person, be in a very nullified space. And it's very cool because it's been like a week. And I really see it in myself very consciously, that shift, which is very interesting, because a lot of times when we're dealing with what we would call difficult people, we always blame the other person for being a difficult person. You know, we're the angels and they're a difficult person. But it's very interesting how a difficult person often triggers our ego. That's how we respond to this difficult person. And then we become like not such a good person. And when you're consciously staying in this space of nullification, listen, it's only been a week, but the dynamics really shift. And it's really very powerful to see. I found it personally very, very powerful to see that. Anyone have what they would like to share from this past week of work?
I mean, I could.
Great. Otherwise, it would just be me. That'd be so boring.
Okay, so one of my kids I picked as like my, as the one to work with. And I did my parts of being like, calm and not responding in a way that I probably shouldn't respond. Do you still get the credit if they still go on with the way they always are, but you kind of kept your cool? Because you didn't really you didn't really heal the relationship. You kind of just like you were working on it, but it didn't, like the other person didn't accept it.
It could be if it's someone like a child that maybe they don't trust you and they don't feel it's real, and that's why they're not shifting, which means inside, like especially, if a child's been hurt, or it could also be an adult, but I'm saying if someone's been hurt, so they're more cautious, they're more guarded, they're not just going to be like, okay, wow, I'm wiping away the last 15 years. So that could be why it seems they're not shifting, but underneath that, they are. And you just have to be consistent. But I do want to raise something else from what Shira said. Not necessarily are we going to heal the other person, which means not necessarily will we heal the relationship even. But that's why we're giving the gift, because we're healing ourselves. We're healing ourselves. Probably when you stick with nullification, and again, it could be eventually because the person might not trust it, or is already they're guarded, they're already fighting, so they're not even aware that nobody's there to fight against. And then after a while, they realize they're punching the air because there's nobody there to fight against. So I do believe eventually the relationship will heal. Do I believe the other person will heal? Not necessarily. Not necessarily, because unless you really are the cause of their issues, but you're probably not. Their issues are probably them, but as a significant person in their life, a mother to a child, a spouse, a child to a parent, siblings, very significant people in our lives, obviously, as we interact with people, that affects the people. If you were writing a novel, there's a protagonist and then there's like the secondary characters, but they all impact the protagonist, obviously. So obviously you as a mother are impacting this child's character, just as your mother impacted your character. But it doesn't mean it's all because of you, even though a mother is incredibly significant. So meaning you could be absolutely there, you could be absolutely nullified. The relationship could really be so good, and the child still has a lot of her own stuff to work through. Because you're not, even though they might say it, we're not necessarily the source of all their problems. But the relationship should change, and it could take time, because it might take time till till the person's going to accept that this is genuine and I can trust it and like relax my defenses. But the thing is for us is to really be like you're saying, like being calm. Really, it's nullified is even deeper than that. Nullified is really listening and interacting with the other person with this sense of, I just want to be now like a recipient. I'm like putting myself on the side. I'm letting their energy flow. This is not about me. This is not about what I'm thinking. This is not about what I want. I'm letting it flow. I had something actually so I did not pick my husband for the person. Thank God he's not my trigger. But because I was working very hard on someone else, which is also one of my children, inevitably it spreads. It just spreads. So you just start being that way with other people. So it was just really cool talking about God. My husband, so I just lately have been so nullified. It's like amazing. So you need, on your Seder plate, the neck bone of the chicken, right, for your zroya. And the chickens we buy, generally the only way to get the neck bone is to buy a whole chicken that has the neck bone in it. Those are the chickens we use. Now, I don't like using whole chickens. So I got like 2, and I figured a neck bone, you can always break into little pieces, not a problem. We have obviously many Seder plates, but no big deal. You break a neck bone into many pieces, it's still a neck bone. And so my husband at one point this past week, he said to me something about like, how many neck bones do we have? And I said, we have 2. So we have 2 and we have so many Seder plates. I said, no big deal, I'll break it into a lot of pieces. He's like, no, that's not right. And I was like, just because I was being such a virtuous, holy person, I was like, it's fine. You want, go to Jewel, buy as many whole chickens as you want. He said, he could at least cut them when they're frozen. I'm like, no way. The only way I could use them is I defrost them. So you're just going to buy like 20 chickens and I'll defrost them all and I'll deal with it. It's fine. No problem. My halo was shining. Anyway, fine. Okay. So he was happy and I was feeling very virtuous. And in honor of the virtue, at a certain point in the day, I got a text or a WhatsApp, like some random WhatsApp, like someone sent me forwarded. I don't even know how I got it. That in a certain store, they actually have packages of the neck bones that we use. So I was very happy to tell my husband he doesn't have to buy me 20 whole chickens that I'm going to defrost and deal with. He can actually buy packages of neck bones. So I'm sharing that long-winded, boring story because I felt like God was saying, wow, you're really making a big effort. Don't worry. I appreciate it. Like Shira felt with the blood in the shape of the heart. I felt that with the neck bones of the chicken. Like I was saying, you were so virtuous, no problem. I'm making it work out. You don't have to deal with 20 whole chickens. And what are you going to do with them? So we really see from this that God really, really appreciates it. Because this is really Exodus. This is really leaving Egypt. This is really taking the most Egypt part of us. That very not pretty ego that's embedded in all of us. That's at the roots of so many problems in relationships between spouses, between parents and children, between all people in your life. Any problematic relationship, if you look into it, my guess is ego is at the roots. I could be wrong, but 99 plus, ego is at the roots.
Mrs. Turn,
Yes.
how can you decipher when your ego is what is getting in your way or clouding your judgment or thoughts?
Because when you're finding yourself in this space, in this negative space, whatever the negative space is, if you're in this negative space right away, especially now, because it's a week to Passover, right away it's like, wait, is this real or is this my ego? And what's a good thing to do is try to like very consciously step out of the situation, step out of the ego, and then look at it again. Like really step away. Like if if someone made a comment and that comment was so hurtful and offensive, and then you say like, wait a minute, is this real or is this ego? I want to stop. I want to just stop, step away. I want to put myself in a very like, I'm a nullified space. I accept everything. I just want to be embracive. I just want to be inclusive of everyone. And let me roll that comment in my brain again. And let me like ask myself, is that so offensive? Is that so hurting me? Or can I tolerate it? If I could, then it was probably my ego. Now, again, that doesn't take away the other person's guilt. It doesn't. It doesn't take away that the other person could be in a bad space. It doesn't take away that the other person could be not well. It doesn't take away the other person could be trying to be hurtful. All those things could be real. But your reactions could be coming from your ego interfacing with them and their unwellness. You know, like if you're driving and there's this really rude driver on the road, okay, you don't know them, they don't know you, nothing personal, they're just like a really rude driver. And you get really upset. Are they a rude driver? Yes. Do you need to get really upset about it? No. Thank God you don't know them. You're not married to them. You don't live with them. Why is it meaningful to you to get upset over it? Because of your ego. So your ego got affected and got involved, and someone's doing this to me. And that's why I'm so upset by something that if I was in a non-ego space would be like meaningless. Okay. Kapara. Like, who cares?
Okay. So
my ego,
just so
I got engaged in it.
Just so I understand correctly. So if you're looking at it, you know, you've calmed down, you're looking at the situation again, but that
taking
still
ego out of the
bothers
picture. You are taking ego out of the picture. You're calm and you are putting yourself in a very nullified space. A very nullified space feels like it's a very conscious effort, because we in our native space are not nullified at all. So a nullified space means I'm consciously taking my I out of the picture. I don't want it to be a confrontation between my I and this other person's I. So I'm taking my I away and I'm just trying to be in the most nullified space where I'm just trying to be able to absorb the other person, to embrace the other person, to accept the other person as they are. I'm just accepting. And then does it really bother me what they said? No, why not? Because I took all my ego out of it. So what do I care that they said? That wasn't a nice comment. It wasn't a nice comment at all, but it doesn't hurt me. It only hurts me because my ego gets involved. And then how could someone say this to me? But if the me is not there, then the comment, I can feel bad for them that they say not nice things, but it's not hurtful.
Okay.
If you have a little child, if I remember once, this is my second to oldest son, so he's 29 plus, almost 30. And I remember when he was like in like, I don't know, maybe like nursery, kindergarten, you know, like some 25 years ago. And I think I came to school for, I don't remember what, sitter party, you know, one of those types of things. And I don't remember at the party or afterwards, he was upset. I said to him, he said, Mommy, the boys in my class said you're so ugly. And he was so upset. And I just started laughing. Like, why didn't I get all upset? I mean, someone's saying I'm not pretty, I'm ugly. Because to me, it was very funny if a 4 or 5-year-old little boy is gonna start commenting on what I look like. So my ego wasn't engaged. It was, you know, how could your ego be engaged by a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old? So therefore, I laughed. I said, "Don't worry, Mental, it's fine. You know, it's fine. Don't worry what they say. It doesn't make a difference." Because it's like, because your ego's not going to get offended. But if somebody that was of age that I thought their opinion had some weight said that, well, obviously it would be very offensive. It would hurt me. Why would it hurt me? Because my ego got engaged. But when I'm talking with a 4 or 5-year-old child, like my ego, even my ego couldn't get involved. So therefore the comment didn't hurt at all. So a lot of times we have to like really look at ourselves and see, how would I process this if I could get my ego out of the situation? I don't know if I'm explaining very clearly how to do it. I know what I'm trying to say, but I don't know if I'm saying it well enough. Did anyone
You're not
else have an
talking
experience
about-
this week that they could share how they did it? So maybe you could hear a different voice saying this.
You're not talking about people who are toxic for you, right? Like people that are in your life that are still that you know are toxic. Are you talking about that? Like to try to
In terms of, would you try to have nullification with them as well? You would. Though you would
Why?
also try to limit your contact with them, because if they're toxic, you should be around them as little as possible.
You're
But
correct.
when you have to be around them, because it's a situation that you can't avoid being around them,
Right.
then I would, yes, I would definitely want to have that same nullification. Again, think of it like it's for you. It's not for them, it's for you. That's why I'm saying, I'm suggesting giving this gift, because it's for you. It's they're helping you heal yourself. So even though you could be like, wait, these people are not, this woman is not well. She's not well. But that doesn't mean I should mess myself up because I'm dealing with someone who's not well. There's an expression, it's a saying of our sages, "Hamesavek iminavel mitnavel," which means one who fights with someone who's dirty gets dirty. Very powerful truth saying of our sages, like many very wise sayings. I'm fighting with someone who's dirty. They're dirty. I'm clean. But if I'm engaging with someone who's dirty, the dirt goes on me also. So if you're dealing with a toxic, unhealthy, unwell person, my first advice is try to have boundaries that you don't deal with them. Try to not be in situations that you're with unhealthy people. But then you sometimes have no choice. That unhealthy person might be your boss and you can't leave your job. They might be a child, they might be a relative, they might be someone that you can't just completely cut out of your life. You could try to limit the contact, but you can't cut it out, and you know the person's not well. So they're not well. You didn't create their not wellness. They're not well. But your response to them, that's where you get engaged and get dirty also. So when you're trying to act in this nullified way, you don't want to get dirty. You don't want to pick up their dirt on any level. Shira?
So I found this week with the kids, besides that one kid I was like working on, I found the other kids also, like if they were being disrespectful or rude, I would kind of just be like, don't get upset. Like, why am I getting upset? They're being themselves. And I just kind of like, okay, whatever. Like I tried removing that ego. And by the way, you said you're not, you think you're 100% right about the 95, whatever percentage, I hope you're right. 'Cause I've been telling a lot of people that, so I don't want to spread, something that's not true.
True.
But no, it's true. When the kids are like rude, disrespectful, or just like not nice, I'm just like, you know what? I used to get like really mad, being like, you're so rude. How do you talk to me like that? What's wrong with you? But it's this week, I'm just like, okay, whatever. Like, why would I get mad?
Right. They're a child. They're a child and they don't yet have the tools. And the best way for them to have the tools is for you to demonstrate and model those tools. And sometimes when we act in that way, it really does change not only children. I mean, there's a famous story with the first leader of Chabad. It's called the Alter Rebbe, Reb Shlomo Zalman of Liadi. You might not view it as a similar story, but I think it is. He was once in a town, whatever, I don't have to go through all the window dressing of the story. There was this case, a very poor orphan Chassan was taken. The police were demanding this tremendous amount of money to free him. He was supposed to get married the next day to another poor orphan girl. So it's orphans and Pidyon Shvuyim and Chatan V'Kala. You got all the great merits all rolled in, but nobody in the town had money. And the Alter Rebbe happened to be in the town. So he's like, okay, he's going to go collecting. But they said, nobody has money. And there was like some big fancy home there. He said, what about that person? They said, oh, he doesn't give any money. They said, for years, he'll throw a little copper, like half penny in your face. That's all he'll ever give. So like nobody ever bothers going to him. What are you going to go to him for a half a cupcake? Like, Doctor said, no problem. I don't know. I'm pretending. I don't remember the figure. Let's pretend they needed 20,000 rubles. I don't know what they needed. comes knocking at his very beautiful door, and maybe a servant answered, maybe the man himself answered, and he explained his whole cause, you know, an orphan and a wedding and Pidyon Shvuyim. And he said, oh, of course, I'm so glad to help. And this big fancy house pulls out literally a copper halfpenny. And the Alter Rebbe took it and he was like, oh, wow, thank you. That's so generous of you. I'm so touched. This is going to be so beneficial for this great worthy cause. Thank you. That was so kind. And he turns to leave, holding on the penny. And the man looks at him like totally confused. He's like, but you know what? I think I have something else to give you. The Alter Rebbe says, oh, really? So nice of you. Comes back. He opens up his wallet. Then he pulls out another like halfpenny copper coin. And the Alter was like, oh, thank you. Wow, so generous. You doubled your donation. Da, 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 da. Turns to leave, calls him back, turns to leave, calls him back, turns to leave, calls him back. By the time we were done, the man gave him the entire sum of this 20,000 rubles. Now, obviously, this is a tzaddik. This is not a regular person. But the psychology behind it is a truth for all of us. I don't know if we can achieve the same results, but the psychology is true. When you're looking at a person and they're like waiting for you to smack them, he's waiting for you to throw that coin in his face, and you say, oh, that was so kind, that was so generous. You're just so nullified and embracive and just appreciating, because your ego is totally not involved. It changes the other person. I mean, this is a tzaddik example. I could say, honestly, I've read, I forget the name, but a very famous educator in America today uses a very similar technique. Whenever he's trying to get money for any of his students' projects, he always like calls or sends letters to all the local businesses. And if someone sends back $5, he has every single student write them a thank you letter. He has his principal write a thank you letter. He tries to get the superintendent to write a thank you letter. So this businessman gave $5. He gets like 50 thank you letters. And he just feels so guilty that the next time the teacher calls him, he gives him like hundreds of dollars. Meaning like he's feeling, I don't know if guilty is the right word for it. He's feeling like, oh my gosh, I gave you $5 and you're so appreciative. I could really give you money. Great, we need it, no problem. Let me tell you about my next project. So it's really looking at a person with eyes of nullification. You do sometimes shift the other person, but sometimes you don't. And I don't think you should go into it assuming you're going to shift someone else besides yourself. But when you interact even with a toxic person, but your ego's out of it, you know they're toxic, you know they're not well, and therefore it's as silly to be affected by them as for me to be hurt by a 5-year-old saying I'm ugly, you know? It's the same ridiculousness. And therefore that's how you interact with them. The interaction will be different. I can't say you're healing them, but this interaction will be different. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay.
No, that's hard to do.
It is hard. It is hard, but it helps to envision it like Shira envisioned with her baby. So Shira going back to Shira, she once said something I thought was very useful. She was talking about a certain challenge she had, and she said when she looks at that challenge, she sort of sees the word test emblazoned over that person's forehead. Like she looks and say, okay, this is God testing me right now. So because I know God's testing me, I'm going to act differently. If you know there's a cop, you come to a complete stop by the stop sign. You know there's a cop sitting right there. Well, why don't you come to complete stop? The cop's right there. You know this is a test. You pass it. You know God's testing you. So if you can think of this person or this situation as like, hey, you know, God put this person in my life. God's not random. This person is there for me to grow. Now, obviously, this person has their own trajectory in life, their own, what they're supposed to be accomplishing. But from my end, why am I interacting with the person? And the person could be a parent or a child, and it's still the same truth. There's a reason God gave you that parent. There's a reason God gave you that child. There's a reason God gave you that spouse. You say, no, I picked wrong. There's a God. God picked the spouse. God picked the parent. God picked the child. And there's a reason you are dealing with such a person. And the reason isn't to punish you. The reason is for you to grow. The reason is for you to become the person you are capable of being. And this person's part of the process in how you grow past that situation. So when you're looking at them that way, you're saying, wait, I just want to envision the word test. I want to envision the word opportunity. I want to envision the word God's challenge, God's growth, God's design. And then I want to behave that way. I know right now is the test, is the challenge, is the opportunity. I don't want to blow it. They'll just keep coming back to me. If I blow it, I want to pass it. I want to move past it. So to move past it, I have to stand up to the challenge. So if you think of it that way, that was my concept behind the gift. The reason why I said to give a gift is because I want you to look at this person as the one who's helping me grow. And they're not trying to help me grow, but God planned everything out. So they're in my life. They're helping me grow. I'm growing through their help. Through their help in it speaks a person trying to daven. And I mean, obviously I'm talking nowadays, but like in a few generations ago, when our ancestors, those that were like in Europe or probably anywhere in the world, and some coarse, difficult, dangerous non-Jew is like trying to talk to you and harass you as you're praying. And what the person needs to do is pray more intently, to not even hear the threats or the nastiness or the curse words, to totally block it out. They have to pray much more intently. Okay, and that's what they do. Probing under the surface, this non-Jew has inside of him a spark of God. Everything is supposed to have a spark of God. That's what exists. The only way it can exist is God's inside of it. So the spark of God inside this person orchestrated this whole event. So this person's the catalyst for you to pray more deeply. So do they mean well? They don't mean anything. They don't know what they're doing. But the spark of God inside of them is arranging this whole thing. So they are the tool to bring you to pray more deeply to God. So if we could, and that's how our sages explain these situations. So if we could envision that in terms of what we're going through in our life as like, it's all divine. There's a reason this person's my parent. There's a reason this person's my child. There's a reason this person's my neighbor. There's a reason this person's my boss. There's a reason this person's my employee. There's a reason. God's running the show. Nothing's random. And every such person I need in my life. Why do I need this difficult person in my life? Maybe to escape my own limitations. Do I have their problems? No. But through them, I can escape my limitations. And that's the gift. That's the gift they are unwittingly giving you. They're not meaning to give you that gift. Just like that person that was disturbing the Jew's prayers wasn't consciously aware that he was doing it to help the Jew pray better. But the spark of God inside of him was doing it for that reason. So it's sort of like a very twisted idea of how to bring out this person's greater prayers, or because of, if you remember the biblical story with Joseph, and Eshes Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife, and it says that she was doing everything she could to seduce him. And, very not moral person doing it in very not moral ways. But our sages compare her to a very, very righteous woman, Tamar. Our sages say both of them, like, so to speak, intended for God's sake. Meaning this wife of Potiphar, on some level, understood that she was supposed to marry Joseph, that her tempting him was supposed to facilitate the situation. She didn't read it exactly right. It wasn't her, it was her daughter. But did all of her temptations help Joseph? Yeah, because they forced him to become more and more and more righteous, that he could overcome them and not be seduced by her. So she was trying to seduce him. She wasn't trying to make him more righteous. But she was thinking this is like what God wants. Well, in a sense, she was right. Because what she was doing was forcing his growth to become so holy that he could just completely ignore what she was doing. So again, people have one intention, God might have another intention, but everything is designed by God. Well, it is 9:30 and it is a week before Passover, and people are probably very busy, but I did want to say these steps very briefly. So let me at least give them to you so people can hear them and process. So the last thing we spoke about was the idea of literally envisioning this difficult person as someone that deserves a gift, though they have no clue. But you really feel gratitude because through them, you're moving. The next point, which I'm calling step 6, is that when Passover comes in, you have extra abilities in this direction. Like we said, as you're physically removing yourself from eating the leaven, the chametz, you're eating the matzah, you're physically eating, even to read at least the spell matzah she's going to find. You're physically eating nullification to God. You're eating, it says matzah is the food of angels. Obviously the spirituality of it. We don't mean the physical manifestation, but the physical manifestation, the manifestation of a spirituality. You're eating the food of angels. You're eating godliness. You're eating nullification. So these 8 days, when you can't eat any leaven ego products, when you're hopefully able to eat matzah every single day, to eat godliness, eat the angels' food, eat nullification, eat belief in God, these are the best days of the entire year to gain freedom from ego. In other words, the outer physical world is reflecting our inner spiritual world. So just as in the outer world, we are chametz, ego free, it's much more easy to create it in our inner world as well. So now take that same person, that same child, that same spouse, that same colleague, that same neighbor, that same distant or close relative, that same person, you can demand from yourself deeper work with a person. What's deeper work? You're already amazing. You're already nullified to a person who's obviously not in a very good space. The next level, which I'm holding off for Passover, maybe because it's, you know, it could be like, whoa, is to really pull out a love for this person. Why are you loving them? Because you're looking at them and thinking, he or she is God's gift to help me heal. Not for them to heal, for me to heal. This person is the one helping me heal. When you can really look at a person and feel that they are helping me heal, you will feel a love for them, even though they're so difficult. But their very difficulty is as God's helping you heal through them. And this is going to enable an achdut, a sense of unity, a sense of oneness between the two of you. So you're not just going to be treating them nicely, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel a love for them because they're really part of this amazing process. 7th step, I know it's late, I'll go quickly. Over Passover, keep giving them gifts. Again, gifts don't have to be physical, gifts of your time, gifts of your attention, gifts because when we love someone, we give to them. And the more we give to them, the more we love them. So as you gift the person, you will find more and more love for the person. And as you're eating the matzah, and I said, try to eat the matzah every day, eating this godliness, eating this angel's food, eating this nullification, consciously envision being a nullified person. That as you're chewing, you're integrating the power, you're integrating the power. And then the next step, when you feel all nullified and good and loving and positive for this person, that's such a trigger for you, try it with the next person who drives you crazy. Now, for the next person, it should be a much easier process. First of all, because they obviously don't bother you as much because you didn't pick them first. And also because your muscles are much stronger. You've built up good muscles with the first person, so the next one is so much easier. It's unbelievable. Now, let's say there's no one left that drives you crazy. That's awesome. You had one person, you work so hard, and you really feel you're in a good space with this person in your relationship, and there's no one left that like, oh my gosh, they really push your buttons. That's great. you can still work on nullification in your relationships. Meaning the person doesn't have to be difficult for us to demand ourselves to be nullified. We can in general work on being nullified in relationships. So on one hand, it's not going to be so bad. It's not going to be so hard because they're not difficult people. On the other hand, it's still a challenge because our natural space is chametz, is ego, is I. That's the natural go-to for all of us, for every human. That's how God wired us. So even for an easier person, it's still a lot of focus to stay nullified in a relationship. And then when you've done this, when you've really worked on being nullified in all your relationships, check that superficial manifestation, like whatever, the anger, the impatience, whatever was the original thing you noticed in yourself. It should be gone, crushed. Because when you behave toward others with nullification, without I, without ego, those things, there's no room in your world for it. They literally stopped existing. You didn't combat the outer manifestation directly. You didn't need to. You've healed yourself at the roots. And when you heal yourself at the roots, all those other stuff just like fall away. So thank you for your patience, because I know it's a busy time, but I really wanted to try to get through that. And I really want to bless all of us that we should really be successful in our work. We should really walk the walk, do the work, be honest with ourselves that we do have work to do, even though we're good people, but we still have this work to do. And I think you will be surprised to see how many things will shift in your relationships with other people when you do this work. Have a very liberating Passover, very liberating spiritually and physically once your house is clean and your food is done and you're sitting at the Seder. It should be a wonderful, wonderful week. And the next 2 Sundays are holidays. So we get to talk in 3 weeks. And hopefully hear that everyone had a very, very, very liberating and very kosher and very joyous holiday. Thank you so much for joining.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Mrs. Turin.
Thank you.
Sameach.
Chag Sameach, Chag Sameach. Thank you.